Verbal self-defense. Okay, we're going to have some fun. This is a talk about learning how to speak up for yourself in those really challenging moments. But before we get to that, I want to start with this. Every single one of you has the power to do something absolutely remarkable with your life. And I'm not talking about that with just rose-colored glasses on, you know? Because what everyone in here has is one of the most powerful gifts to affect change. That's not money, and that's not authority. Rather, it's the power to communicate. When we are able to share our ideas without fear of what people may think of us, or if we are worried if we're good enough or not, we step into our power to be our most authentic and true selves. And that is an incredibly powerful place to be. Well, thanks. That was great. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, right? Super inspirational. Okay. I love talks like that, where you're left with these really inspirational statements, and if it were that easy, right? And I know we've all heard people talk about being true to themselves and speaking our mind and boldly going forth. You know, I also want to be on a pizza slice in the water. But then our brain is like, oh, hell no. Because, but this is the thing. This is what happens when we speak up in the face of adversity. Effective communication is a skill we can all learn, but it takes knowledge and practice. It also takes courage, especially in the workplace where we may feel retaliation or being told we are too emotional or just be exasperated that nobody cares anyhow. But today, I'm going to teach you one simple tool in the suite of verbal self-defense skills that can empower your communications and truly affect profound change in your life, your career, and your self-worth. I know a lot about this because before I did executive coaching and personal development training, and before I ran that successful tech marketing consultancy that Jim mentioned, I was someone's employee. Yeah, I worked in the tech startup world in San Francisco for many years. I was in my 20s. I was really excited about my career and so determined to show up and give it my all. But something funny happened. See, I'd walk into these meetings with my boss and all of his buddies he'd hired, and I realized no one would really take me seriously. These guys had ideas that were readily adopted, but I was often put under extra scrutiny and just completely dismissed. And this got really frustrating. One day I was taken aside and I was told, well, Laura, we've gotten some feedback. We've learned that you are intimidating the men in the boardroom. You better I am. You're not nice enough. You need to be nicer to the men, and you need to smile more. And this was put on my performance improvement plan. True story. And I was completely shocked by this. I was just acting like the guys, right? It's a meritocracy, right? And I felt ashamed and angry, and this just wave of heat came over me. And my face started tingling, and I know some of you have felt that before. And you don't know what to do. And I just sat there with no defense. Of course, 20 minutes later, I had a comeback prepared, and I was ready to defend myself, but it was just too late. It's done. Verbal self-defense is the art and practice of responding to those kinds of statements where we feel minimized, interrupted, steamrolled, or dismissed. You could call my time in the corporate world a training ground for learning verbal self-defense. Eventually, I took those skills to start my own marketing consultancy, and I knew exactly how to communicate. And instead of being intimidated and fearful of someone in authority and whatever they were going to say to me, I sat in the boardrooms of some of the biggest companies in the world, often as the only woman at that table, and I always was an equal partner because I had this skill. For a girl who came from two immigrant parents, believe it or not, I'm the whitest Arab you'll ever meet. For real. My parents could have never dreamed for the life that I built for myself. And it really felt remarkable, right? But it was all due to effective communication. Every single one of us in this room has been in a situation where someone has told us something that has shocked us, and you didn't know how to respond. So what happens? We say yes when we really want to say no. We do things we don't really want to. We blame and shame ourselves for not thinking of a comeback sooner. We get anxious about our work. We dread going into the office. And we really question whether or not we're actually in the right career. Often we think if we leave this job, the next one it'll be better. But I have some bad news for you. Wherever you go, there you are. Inevitably, running from the problem only takes us further and further from building that remarkable life all of us want. And this affects all of us, not only women. All right, so let's look at the stats. This is from global research. 70% of employees are disengaged. These are well-known statistics. 4% of employees speak well of their manager. If you're here with your employees, we're having a tense moment right now. Okay. And women who are harassed at the workplace are 6.5 times more likely to leave. Okay, so while we all have HR departments and we all have policies, we also all know these issues remain underreported. Why? Out of fear, out of lack of trust of HR, or that they will experience retaliation. We have enough stories about that. Everyone knows someone, so we don't talk about it. But we need to fix this. One, because it's just the right thing to do. And I know you're all here because you know that. But two, this is costing businesses hundreds of millions of dollars a year for your disengaged workforce. So what's to be done? The one thing each and every one of us can do is learn how to speak up when we feel stunned into silence and take back some of that power. So I want you to remember this. When someone says a statement to you that stuns you into silence and causes you to freeze up, the simplest thing we can do in verbal self-defense is respond with a question about that statement. I want to give you some examples from my students. I run a workshop on verbal self-defense. I have dozens of students come in every time, and here's some of the things that they tell me. We've never had a woman succeed in this role. You look like you can eat. Why are you so emotional? My God. You're too young and pretty to be smart. Women don't belong in engineering. I just want to let you know these are not the worst that I've heard. But these are very, very common. So let's talk about some potential responses. Did you really just say that? Do you think that's funny? Why are you so emotional? Would you speak to your daughter that way? Do you know how that makes you sound? Said in a calm, direct manner. These questions can help to de-escalate the situation, give the other person some much-needed self-awareness, and actually open up a true dialogue. Unless you feel that your life is in danger, where it is safer to get away or get help, or silence is more powerful, as it can be at times, I believe we have an imperative to respond. And respond in ways that de-escalate and teach people how to treat us. The full scope of verbal self-defense gives a series of tools for responding in challenging situations. Asking a question back is the simplest one of those tools, but it is highly effective. If we treat verbal self-defense like a martial art, this is a tool that uses the other person's force and redirects it back at them. It is meant to disarm them, not cut them off at the knees. The truth is, people do not automatically know how to treat you. And the assumption that they do is one of the greatest causes of suffering that I see in the world. Why doesn't the golden rule just work, right? Well, here's the deal. We know from neuroscience that how we show up in the world is merely a projection of our inner reality. That's what I'm giving you an experience of. What we think about, how we treat ourselves privately, what we say to ourselves, what we believe about ourselves. What we believe affects how we perceive as well. So everyone is just giving you an experience of what it's like to be them. And until you speak up, they can only make guesses as to what it's like to be you. And most people are not bad people. I want to say that. I want to be really clear about that. But they are terrible communicators. And if their behavior has not been challenged before, they have received silent cues that it is okay. Nervously laughing off uncomfortable statements, averting your gaze, smiling and changing the topic, tell an individual that their behavior is okay. That is why you cannot escape it in a new job or a new relationship or trying to run somewhere else. If you continue to meet people who violate your boundaries, then you have not clearly enough stated or reasserted your boundaries. Live footage of me. See, typically we stay silent and then we meet our friends for happy hour, right? But the problem is there's no amount of complaining over drinks with your friends that's going to solve this problem. You must address it head on. I have tried to drink my way out of the problem. I'm joking. But we must teach other people how we expect to be treated. When we ask questions, we challenge our assumptions about what they're saying because our beliefs also shape our perceptions. And we question because it helps reassert our power. See, when we freeze in silence, we lose our power. When we ask a question back, we reassert our power and we redirect that person's energy at them and we put them on the spot. Take ourselves off it. Now this takes practice. Just like your airline crew knows exactly what to do in an emergency, without freezing up and panicking, people who practice verbal self-defense can become masters of de-escalation, especially in those tense situations. You learn to stand up for yourself because you're worth it. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the science of why we freeze, because this is not your fault. I'll be brief. Don't worry. We're not going to get too deep into the brain science here. But there are two parts of the brain I want to discuss. We have the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. When we are put in a situation that makes us uncomfortable, the amygdala comes online. This is your reptilian brain. This is one of the oldest and most evolved parts of the brain, and it is responsible for keeping us safe. The amygdala is always scanning for danger, like a lion in the bushes, a guy or a woman who cuts us off in traffic, or a dismissive statement your coworker made. And it is ready to respond by either fighting, fleeing, or freezing. And what is unfortunate is that the amygdala is a lot quicker than the other part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. See, the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain where our executive function lives. Our reasoning center and decision-making center is there. It is a more recent development of the human brain, and believe it or not, is not even fully developed in us until our mid-20s. So, when we freeze up, the amygdala takes right over. So you know how you always think of that comeback like a few minutes later? That's because it took that long for your prefrontal cortex to come back online and respond, right? Because we've all been taught one thing from a young age. When we're asked a question, I'm supposed to respond to the question, right? That's nonsense. When we're told a question that offends us, you're under no obligation to answer that question. If your amygdala has been fired up, you won't be able to think of a well-thought-out response anyhow. So, the simplest thing we can do, without thinking too much, is ask a question about what was just said. It takes the heat off us, and it puts it back on that person. It makes it their problem to solve instead of our problem, and it gives us time to recover, which might be enough time for your reasoning brain to come back online and logically suss out the situation that you're in. Men and women can both benefit from verbal self-defense. We all face these challenging situations where we feel at a loss for words. If you've ever felt dismissed, ignored, railroaded, berated, minimized, you can use this tool. But what I found in my research is that women face these challenges a lot more often. So if you're in a position of privilege or power and you have not faced these issues, verbal self-defense can also be incredibly useful for you to use when we witness a challenging situation between two people and we want to intervene. That's also known as Bystander Intervention. If you see a person being spoken to in a manner that is inappropriate, intervene and ask a question. Especially if you are in a position of authority, your words can actually stop that in its tracks and really have meaningful impact. Why do you think it's appropriate to talk to them this way? Do you know how you sound right now? Do you know that your statements do not reflect the values of this company? That's your responsibility. Now, I don't want anyone to leave this talk and say, well, geez, Laura, what can I say without offending someone? God. All right, we're not talking about special treatment. Let's go back to the research. For 64% of women, microaggressions are a workplace reality. What does that mean? Microaggressions are a comment or act that subtly and often unconsciously or unintentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude towards a member of a marginalized group. Like this one. Most commonly, women have to provide more evidence of their competence than men, and every woman in this room knows that. And they have their judgment questioned more often than men in their area of expertise. Did you hear all that? Yeah, I heard that. So here's what I'd ask. Okay, if you're wondering what you can or cannot say to a woman, because you're worried about this, I'm going to take some advice from writer Anne Victoria Clark. Treat all women as you would treat Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Simply offer them the same respect, admiration, and healthy dose of fear that you would offer anyone who could completely destroy your life should you deserve it. Simple. I started this talk by saying you have something remarkable to do with your life. And when we have the courage to speak up, to speak our truth, we build our self-worth and confidence. The greater our self-worth, the greater our ability to go after our dreams, to give ourselves permission to go after those dreams. When we have the unshakable belief that we are enough, without someone else's opinion, you become an unstoppable force of badassery, okay? Because your certainty in your mission is greater than anyone else's doubt. I know this takes courage. And I know that many of us often default to hiding behind the mask of just being nice. But I want to leave you with this. The opposite of nice is not rudeness. The opposite of nice is connection. When we can actually take off our armor and be vulnerable, you have a real opportunity to deepen your connection with that individual. I know that it will seem like there is never a good time to speak up, or that you fear losing your job, any of that stuff. I have a PhD in getting laid off, okay? Believe me, I know about this. It took me going through a series of jobs and getting laid off like it was my business to realize I was not bad at my job. I was just doing a future job in my present role. Fear is an assumption that we are going to experience a loss without a gain, a negative without a positive, or a pain without a pleasure. But fear is nothing more than lack of a plan broken down into small, manageable steps. If you're operating from the perspective that life is only meant to be happy, never sad, only easy, never hard, always positive, never negative, you're living in a fantasy. I'd love to be there with you, but I can't. All of our fantasies are breeding grounds for our fears. I want to say that again, it's very important. Your fantasies are breeding grounds for your fears. If you want to do something great with your life, you must accept that there is no support without challenge, no happy without sad, and no easy without difficult. Doesn't exist. But here's the thing, when we speak up, we give ourselves permission to take on challenges that are meaningful to us, rather than assuming challenges that aren't. See, these challenging moments are your biggest growth opportunities. Every time we're able to overcome one of those low-level challenges, we level up. And we actually get to take on our next higher priority challenge. It does not get easier, but it does get more inspiring. Speaking up for myself taught me how to become a master negotiator. I felt confident negotiating contracts with some of the largest companies on the planet. It made me a better friend, a better partner, because I knew that every challenge was an opportunity for greater connection. It gave me the courage to do stand-up comedy and to switch careers again, and now teach these skills as an executive coach. But I never would have gotten there if I had not learned to work through these challenging circumstances. So I am very grateful for them. See, it starts with learning how to defend yourself at work, right? We talked about that. But this work is going to cascade into all areas of your life. If you learn how to stand up and speak up for yourself, there is literally no limit to what you can achieve. I believe in you, and I believe in your ability to do great things. It starts with using your voice. Nobody wants to talk about this problem, okay? We all know it exists, but more diversity in our teams and more diversity at the top means better products being designed, more engaged workforces. Your employees need these skills to better navigate their careers and become better managers, let's up that 4%, and better leaders. Here's what I'm looking for today. I'm looking for a great corporate partner who values diversity and inclusion and who wants to run a pilot program of this. I know that you believe that more diversity makes a better team and a stronger company. So let's work together to make that happen. Thank you.